that'd be great. So my name is Dirk. I work at SPIE, which is the International Society for Optics and Photonics. And Luis suggested that maybe I should talk a little, or say a little bit about my background and what I do. And then I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. So I studied astronomy and physics in school. I've got a bachelor's in astronomy and astrophysics. Entered a PhD program at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I worked there for 5 years, got a master's. My advisor and I did not have a very excellent relationship. In fact, I would say we probably had a very poor relationship, and so I left, and I didn't finish my finish my PhD, and I went to do some different things afterwards. After I left school, I worked for a company that did outdoor trips for people with disabilities, and so I worked for that company for a couple of years, and it was the thing that was very interesting for me was that I learned a lot every day in that new job, and somehow, even during my PhD, the 3 years after my master's that I was working on my PhD, I felt like my learning had kind of slowed down, you know, and I think that might be a common experience after you finish your master's classes. Now you're kind of at the edge of learning at some level. So it was really neat to do something completely different for a while. Various travels and moving brought me to a place called Bellingham, Washington, which is halfway between Seattle and Vancouver, Canada. And I was guiding some kayaking trips and on the ocean every day, which was a really nice change from my office where I was at the computer for 12 to 14 hours a day working on data reduction. So that was great. And after that summer finished up, there's really not a lot of kayaking to be done in the wintertime. And so I started looking for a job. And just by good luck, I found a job at SPIE. It is, again, it's a story of being sort of in the right place at the right time. I was applying for different jobs, and I didn't get a bunch of them in a row. But then someone who had interviewed me for a job called me 2 weeks later and said, you know, hey, I have a friend who's looking for someone to work at SPIE. You should go down and talk to them. And so that was 10 years ago in January. So I've been working there for quite a while. I work on the student services program, and I really enjoy working with students and helping them be successful in their careers. It's a bit of therapy for me in some ways, like not being successful with my PhD program. Maybe I can help you all be successful. I don't consider what happened with me a mistake necessarily, but you know, sometimes it's important to find your proper path. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
First of all, I want to thank every one of you for coming here, and I'm going to change right now of the master ceremony. He's late.
Let me breathe. Then does anybody have a question?
Well done, Luis. Well done.
Nobody? Well, does anybody have these questions?
Oh, sure.
For example,
Oh,
does somebody did ask you this before or something?
no, you can ask any of those questions.
From our partner, René, we have this question that what is your opinion about women in science?
Okay, the question is about women in science. I think that to be in a world that doesn't value and use the talents of half of the population is crazy. And the best thing, I think, so let me start in the beginning. I've worked and had the pleasure in my career to work with a lot of excellent women. I have two bosses, June Thompson and Christinda Plankovich, who are role models for me in ways to run the business of SPIE, and they work incredibly hard and are incredibly talented, and you can learn from anyone and everyone, and you should. Women in science, I think, have a harder road to travel than men do. There are numerous studies that have been done, at least in the U.S. and I think in many places in the world. The most recent one that I remember was they took resumes, identical resumes, and they put a man's name on the top of one resume and they put a woman's name on the top of the other resume, and they gave them to different people in universities and said, who would you like to hire for a master's or a PhD candidate? And overall, the men's resumes did better, 70% better, and it's identical information in both of them. I mean, it strikes me as pretty obvious that that there's still unconscious bias against promoting women and believing that women can be talented in science and effective. So it's important, and one of the things that I think that people can do is first recognize that this is reality, and this is something that's slow to change. It's generationally, I think it's getting better, but there's a lot still to be done. If you are a woman in science, I think probably one of the most important things to do is to find mentors, find other women out there who are doing things that you're interested in. They don't just have, obviously mentors don't just have to be other women, but it certainly helps. I think that some of the questions that you might ask yourselves about career and family might be different than some of the questions that guys have about careers and family. And so it's very useful to find other women who are successful. SPIE has a program called Women in Optics, and we bring speakers to our conferences who can talk about these issues. But really, if it's still kind of up to you to seek out these relationships that can help you make your careers and make your decisions easier. And as a guy, I think it's important and useful to value and we're done. Okay. All right.
Comes another one.
Okay. We have many. Thank you, Luis. Gustavo. Okay. As a guy, one of the things that you can do is understand and figure out what talents people have, and to understand that well, let me give you this other piece of study. So they looked at men and women who were applying for faculty positions at universities, and they looked at the recommendation letters that were provided for both men and for women. And one of the things that they found in the recommendation letters was that the language that was used to describe men has a certain trend to it. Words like brilliant, driven, hardworking, things that talk about sometimes the intrinsic intelligence of someone. On the side of the women, the language that we used to describe them in the recommendation letters were things like compassionate, kind, giving of their time. And it's hard, it sets up some different expectations. There is less language that described the scientific qualities, or what people on the selection committees typically think of as the scientific qualities of the women. So there's a lot going on that is related to how people think about who will be successful as a scientist. So don't throw away half the population and think that there's some things that women do well and some things that men do well. People have wide varieties of talents, and I really, in my work, tried to help make sure that women get opportunities, and I've really enjoyed working with the talented women here. Perla, as you know, is an incredibly well organized and driven person who's also an excellent scientist. So find these role models out there and work with them. Questions? What do you think? Yeah.
Thanks. How do you think that US see the Mexican people in science?
Huh. That's a good question. So, you know, I think, so if you didn't hear, the question was how do people in the US see Mexico in science, or Mexican people in science? I think that there is recognition of certain centers in Mexico as being especially excellent. What's harder, I think, for people in the U.S. and maybe other countries as well, is to realize that there's excellence in many places. It's not just CIO or INAUE or any of the UNAM, any of the kind of traditional large universities, and we that's something that I've come to realize in my job, is that I see people from universities throughout Mexico and throughout the world studying and being successful in many places. And so what helps, I think, is just personal experience, that you may not change the overall view of Mexico in science, but as an individual you can be an example, and as an individual you can represent your country, and you can represent your talents as a scientist. And whenever you go to a conference, whenever you go out in the world, it's hard for people to think of other people as not connected to their nationality. So be aware of that. I mean, I feel a bit as a representative of the U.S. here, and I worry that I'm living up to some stereotypes by not speaking any Spanish, and there's some things related to that. So view of Mexico in science, I think. So one of the things that's interesting, or perhaps a challenge for Mexico, is the industry that's related to science here. So what are the technological companies that work in Mexico that you could potentially get a job with here in this country? And as that grows, I think the reputation of the country will also grow, because having people in business and in universities are both needed for that perception to change.
Does anybody has another question? No? Right there? No? Okay.
No? Question?
Now, this is a personal one. Which is the best experience you had in the time you worked for SPY?
The best, okay, the question is, what's the best experience I've had working at SPIE? Of leadership training, and brings a whole lot of people to San Diego, and people who maybe have never come to the US, people who have never given a scientific paper, or even potentially traveled outside of their country. And our job is to help make that a positive and happy experience for them. And I really love it. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you. In a less formal way, Mr. Ismael, right there, asked, do you practice any sport?
Yes, I do. So sports, I really like kayaking, which is on the ocean or on rivers. There's a small boat, and you try to go down some whitewater. And in the wintertime, when there's a lot of snow where I live, I go skiing. So those are the two things. They're kind of I really like both of them because it's small groups of people. That's kind of informal. It's not a team thing, but it's fun. Earlier in my life, I also played something called Ultimate Frisbee. Does anybody here play Frisbee? Frisbee? You have a forehand? Yeah, one. Okay, good. So those are the sports that I like. I don't watch much television, so I don't keep up with the rest of the official sports world. But I don't know. World Cup, it's good. What you all? Yeah. Anyway.
Anyone with a question?
Gracias. You have seen so many students around the world, so what do you say is the best quality of a science student can have?
The rational mind is incredibly powerful. The ability to think logically about problems and the desire to solve them. I don't think this world really supports rational, logical thought as well as it could. There's a lot of magical thinking in the world that, I don't know, I think sometimes leads us astray, but logic and rational thought is, to my mind, the way to solve problems and the way to fix a lot of the problems that we see in the world. And that's the quality that you all bring, is that sharpness and that ability to concentrate and focus on a problem and look at all the different pieces of it and to try to find solutions in a logical way. And logic doesn't mean that you don't use intuition, that you don't take a bunch of pieces and synthesize a result from it. It just means that there are steps to it, and you don't just come up with the answer with no evidence or no thought to it. So I think that's definitely the best quality. One of the things that I think, if I could turn the question around a little bit, and a quality that I would like to see you all develop is that ability to work with people as well. This is somewhat of a dark quote, but one of the quotes that I've heard before is that hell is other people, and I don't know if I believe that, but when you go out into the world with your jobs, the problems that you will encounter that are going to be the hardest, I think, is working in groups and working with teams and people and with other expectations, and it's not as easy to apply that logical problem-solving steps to people's feelings. So that's the other side of the coin, that you guys are really strong in the logical side of things, but sometimes should also experience or practice as much as you can how to work with other people in addition to that. So those two qualities are complementary, and if you can do both of those, I think you'll be very effective as in leadership, wherever your life takes you. Sure.
Another question? No? It's free? Okay. Why do you choose optics and photonics as a physics career?
So it kind of chose me. I mean, I'm not sure what I would be doing, and if I wanted to live in Bellingham. It's a really cool city, and I wanted to live there. So, I'd be cleaning fish at the factory or something if I wasn't there. I don't know. But the thing that really grabbed me about astronomy, which was the first thing that I really loved, was just being outside at night. My dad lives very far away from cities, and so it's always very dark at night, and so I watched the Perseid meteor shower when I was 12 years old, and just to watch the sky change over the course of the night and have that experience of the planet turning underneath of you, and this kind of, I don't know, beautiful, mystical kind of experience of meteors coming down through the atmosphere of the Earth, and I don't know. I wanted to know everything about the night sky and the things in it. So that's what grabbed me about science and astronomy. And after that, I started reading books like crazy about astronomy, and that started me on the path of my misspent youth.
Once we were talking about light, Miss Renee asked, what fascinates you the most about light?
The science of light is incredibly broad. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do with light. The question is, what fascinates me the most about it? And I think the answer is just the potential for optics to solve so many different problems. I mean, think of the things that are coming down the pike with optics. Biomedical optics has been growing incredibly just in the last 5 to 10 years. Since I started SPIE, our biomedical optics conference has grown by a factor of 5. That's 10? There's 250 companies there that are doing biomedical optics. The ways that we can improve people's health and cut the costs of healthcare, which are very large, with optics, I think that has a huge amount of potential. People are learning a lot more about how light can improve health. There's something called photodynamic therapy, which is just the colors of light that are in your lamps or wherever you are in your workplace have an effect on your health. I mean, that's crazy. I had a little minor surgery this year, and it was all done with endoscopes, right? If endoscopes fiber optics and endoscopes hadn't been invented, there would be large scars in my face right now, and so I'm happy about that. Yeah, light has incredible potential, and I think, my talents are not in the actual science and the research side of things. I learned that over the course of about 5 years. But yours are, and as a result, I'm really excited for the kinds of things that you guys will invent, develop, and hopefully bring out into the world. One of the pieces I'd like to encourage you about is that research, I think, that is effective in the lab and that you might be published for, there's another step beyond that, and that research needs to get out of the lab and into the world via some kind of commercialization or building a company or licensing that technology somewhere. Research that has the potential to help people but just stops in the lab only benefits a small handful of other researchers. In order to really go the full way, if you have the talents and the skills to start a company or build on that research and bring it out to more people, I really encourage you to give it a shot. It's a learned skill. You can do it, and it's really necessary. Questions? Yeah, Renee.
Actually,
Calm down.
okay, actually, it's a question from Perla. She wants to know how many birthday greetings on average do you receive?
Birthday greetings. Do any of you know Carlos Lopez Mariscal? He's from Tec de Monterrey. I met him in 2005 at the first leadership workshop. And about a year later, in 2006, Carlos said, you need to get on Facebook, Dirk. And so I did. And well, if you see 200 people a year at a leadership workshop, you tend to accumulate a lot of Facebook friends. So I get a lot of birthday greetings. Perla sent me a really nice one this year with a video on it. It was really funny. I get a lot. I don't spend a lot of, I don't know, let me take that back. I don't put a lot into Facebook, but I get a lot out of it. And so if you send me a birthday greeting, awesome. It's not necessary, really, but it's cool, so thank you. Yeah? Gustavo.
Well, we started this symposium since 2 days ago, and we had a lot of chats, talks, sorry. Motivational and teamwork, about quantum physics, about optical design.
Mm-hmm.
So, my question is,
I hear you.
do you know today is my birthday?
It's your birthday?
Yeah.
Oh! Can I lead you all in a round of happy birthday? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Gustavo. Happy birthday to you.
Very thanks.
Yeah, I know
Right
now.
there.
Yes, Marisol. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can I tell you the name of?
Could you tell me the name of a scientist you admire and why?
It's an interesting question. Let's see. Well, I definitely admire the CEO of SPIE, Eugene Arthurs. If you ever have a chance to meet him at an SPIE conference or when he's traveling, Eugene is really an excellent person. Wherever I go in the world, it seems like Eugene has been there first, and he knows everyone in optics. He studied lasers in the late 60s in England, and he was the CEO of several companies, optics companies. So I definitely admire him. There are a lot of unsung scientists out there. Let's see, Cecilia Kopane-Gaposchkin was an astronomer. There are unfortunately a lot of sad stories about scientists, especially women scientists, who did a lot of work but got no credit for it. She was one of the first people to understand the spectra of stars, and of course her advisor basically published the research without giving her credit. She stuck with it and basically used a crowbar to get into the academic world. So I admire her. I don't know. There are a lot of scientists around here that I think are worth of all the focus conferences, but sometimes it hasn't worked out like that. It was very sad to miss the one in Medellin, Colombia last year, and I have a feeling that neither of us will get to go to Armenia in the summertime for the focus conference in Armenia, and so I'm not sure. It's unfortunately it's not up to me where I travel to, so I'm really happy that I got to go to this one and see what you all can put together, and it's impressive and it's a lot of fun. So I can't promise to go anywhere, unfortunately. So even if you invite me, and I would love to go wherever you're inviting me, I personally don't make that decision.
Which is the
gosh. So I mentioned the best experience being the opening the leadership workshop every year. The worst experience is somewhat like that. I'm a terrible procrastinator, and one of the things that always happens related to the leadership workshop is that the 2 weeks before the workshop, it's like email questions, 15, 20, sometimes in an hour, and they come faster than I can respond to them. And so about 2 weeks before the leadership workshop is when we really have figured out what the program will be. And so just about the time that I should start writing my talks and start putting these presentations together is when the questions really start coming. And so without fail, every year, I'm not sleeping the night before as I'm trying to put this program together. And so the first 2 or 3 years that I did the leadership workshop, I was crazy, and I tried to do basically many of the presentations throughout the day and do a lot of the talks. And so the first, I think there were several times that, I was on maybe 6 hours of sleep in 2 days, and trying to be effective and present and be dynamic on stage as well. And it was, I won't say it didn't work, but it really didn't work for me. I was dead. And people would come up and say, "You look very tired." I'd be like, "Yes, I feel very tired." So I would encourage you to, I don't know, try to procrastinate less, as if that's possible. I don't know. But yeah, it's related to trying to do too much in too little time, usually. Yeah, thank you for your question. Just yell. Just yell. I hear you.
In your experience, most of the universities in the USA encourage minorities to apply for the faculty jobs, but the percentage of minorities that apply, what percentage of these minorities that apply actually get the job?
So Gustav's question was, universities in the U.S. apply minorities to, or encourage minorities to apply for faculty jobs, and the question is, what percentage get those jobs? And I wish I had data at the top of my head to give you. Unfortunately, with physics jobs, there's the statistics. It's what's called small number statistics, and it's hard to kind of know, what. I don't think there's an advantage, right? They say they encourage minorities to apply, and unfortunately, I think that they want to see the applications. Whether you get selected or not is still going to be based on that strange kind of chemistry of your job talk, your connections, your, universities have something they call fit, and they try to guess whether you will be a good member of that faculty community. Does the faculty want to work with you? And that's really hard to engineer that. So unfortunately, I don't know what the answer is to it. The things that can help you, as I said on Wednesday, are to find out about these jobs and potentially be successful, is to have good relationships with other people in your field, and to have a good network that can provide that recommendation, that can provide that endorsement at a critical time. But as I said, I don't think being a minority is a particularly big advantage in the job field. Maybe it should be more than it is. Questions?
I got another one. What would you do to change the world?
What would I do to change the world? Well, thank you for that, as if that's in my power. I don't know. Maybe I think I'm doing it. You know, we talked a little bit on Wednesday about that crazy 4-piece Venn diagram, and my answers to those 4 questions kind of point to they're all mutually consistent, right? So, am I doing what I love? Yeah, I really do love working with talented people like you all. What am I good at? I kind of think I'm slowly getting good at this, presentations and helping people become effective. What does the world need? It needs rational-minded people to solve problems. And they pay me for it, which is a source of incredible amusement and surprise to me every time I get a paycheck. So I think I'm doing it. If I had superpowers to change bigger things, I don't know. I think the waste problem in the world is really extreme. You know, I mean, I look at things like this, and not to criticize our delicious meal here, but you think every day thousands and thousands and billions of people around the world are producing one item, and you multiply that by 3 meals a day, 365 days a year. I mean, I think that we need to look a little bit differently about how we use resources. I wonder if in the future, you know, this whole world will be a large landfill, and all our whole job will be to find valuable things in it. And so figuring out how to deal with and recycle the things that we use more effectively, I would wave my wand to do that. Water quality. Once we run out of clean, drinkable water in this world, we're screwed. So, yeah, those are the things that I think are important. Thank you. That was a good question.
Nobody? Another more question? Yep. If nobody has another question, I think we can finish this coffee science.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming out and asking me questions and thinking that I have the answers. I kind of probably don't. I think that's probably you guys who have a lot of answers as well. But thank you for letting me represent that I might have some answers.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Have a good day.